Hey everyone, this is Christy Furio with Keys to the Shop. Welcome to another edition of Shift Break. Today's episode is brought to you by the Ground Control Cyclops Brewer from Voga Coffee. The Ground Control Brewer is an amazing leap forward for brewing technology. It is really changing the game for what you expect from a batch brewer. The SCA award-winning technology gives you control over a range of flavors in the coffee that you never thought possible, and the versatility of the machine is unmatched. You can make next level batch brew, of course, but also cocoa, tea. You can make cold brew, batched iced lattes. It really gives you a lot of options, especially in a time where, we're pivoting and we need more versatility from our equipment and from our cafes. This is the type of machine that pivots with you and produces just an unmatched quality that gives your customers a superior beverage experience. So I would really encourage you to look into the Ground Control Cyclops Brewer from Voga Coffee. Just go to their website to find out more information over at vogacoffee.com. That's VOGA coffee.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Flair Espresso, maker of all lever press espresso machines that give you cafe quality espresso in your own home for a fraction of the price that you pay for a home espresso machine, a professional home espresso machine. That's what kept me from getting one for all these years. And I work in coffee, and so I would just go to the shop and get a coffee, but I've always wanted to have espresso at home, and with my Flair Pro 2, when I purchased it, it really was a revelation. Drinking cafe quality espresso in my kitchen was fantastic. It was some of the best shots I've had, actually. And it's easy to use. It's really solidly made and portable as well. Most models come with their own carrying case. It really is the perfect balance of convenience and tradition. So right now, if you purchase anything from Flair Espresso, you can get 5% off your entire order when you use the code KEYS2THEFLAIR at checkout. I'll say that again, that's 5% off your entire order when you go to flairespresso.com. You make an order of any amount, you'll get 5% off when you use the code KEYS2THEFLAIR. So go check them out. I'm really glad that I did, and I think you will be too. flairespresso.com. All right, everybody. So I hope you're having a great day. And, I was doing some work for a client, just revamping some training processes and thinking about the onboarding process. And there's an element of the onboarding process and training that is very, very common in cafes, and that is the shadow shift. Shadow shifts are when you take a new barista and you put them with an experienced barista, or you put them with a manager. And typically what happens in these shifts is there's a bit of, obviously there's going to be this weird, they don't know what to do, so I'm going to show them. And it's kind of difficult because sometimes you're not even really aware that you're going to be doing a shadow shift until you open the store and then there's a new person there and your manager's like, oh, by the way, the new person's going to be working with you, so go ahead and show them the ropes. I'll link to a past shift break where we talked about unfair expectations of staff taking on the responsibility of training without compensation or even any warning. But the shadow shift, again, is a time where the new barista is going on to learn. And what ends up happening, though, is the person who is experienced takes on 80% of all the work that happens in the cafe. And because of their being taxed mentally, and emotionally during this time, they really don't have the wherewithal to walk the barista or the new barista through all of the stuff that they need to know. And so that first barista, the new one, becomes a little bit like deer in the headlights, and they feel bad for asking the other barista questions because they know that that barista has to work harder because they're there. They feel bad about it. They're trying to do their best, but they just don't know how to do their best. And so we put both people in an unfair situation where they just try to get the work done. And in our mind, on paper, when we put them in the shadow shift, they're like, oh, great, I'm just going to drop them in there and they're just going to absorb all this knowledge. It's going to be awesome. And then they're going to be amazing baristas at the other end, like a machine. You're just going to pull a crank, pull a switch, and the barista will come out the other end fully knowing all of the intricacies of the POS system, how we do dishes, what the closing tasks are, etc. And at the end of these shadow shifts, isn't it always the case that we're a little bit amazed at how little is retained in because we're not there, we don't see. It's because not much was able to be done. It's just an unfair situation that wasn't really thought through. But there is a way to do shadow shifts that is really constructive, and it just adds a few more layers of planning to the process. And so we want shadow shifts. I think those are fine. But what I think we need more of is structured shadow shifts. Structured shadow shifts work for the purposes of what we think shadow shifts should do, but don't typically do. Because in a structured shadow shift, you have an extra person, and you also have a list of things that you need them to cover on a progressive basis. So here's what I mean. You got two people that work the bar. You think, well, one of those two people is going to be a new person, and I'll put them with my best barista. Again, way to go rewarding, quote unquote, your best barista with what is not in a mean way right now, your worst barista. They're going to have to do a lot more work, etc. Now, you can still use your best barista as an instructor or yourself as a manager. But whoever is doing the instructing, whoever is walking the barista through the ropes is a third on shift. One regular barista, one new barista, and then the instructing barista, the one who the new barista is supposed to be shadowing. So now you have the benefit of attention. What's key here is that you don't treat this shift like a 3-person shift. The instructor and the shadow shift new barista should be joined at the hip. And the instructor should be actually instructing, walking them through all the stuff that they're doing. So they're going through and making drinks. They're going through and doing the POS. And all the while, they're not just going through muscle memory and hoping that the barista watches them. They're explaining what's happening. And they have a list of items that they need to cover every shadow shift and give the new barista opportunity to get their hands in the work and just kind of learn by watching, doing, by being coached, and by practice. And that's the purpose of this shadow shift, right? Is to get them familiar with all the processes. It's intensive right from the beginning because we want to equip them for success. Because if we don't do that in the beginning, then we're going to have to be answering tons of questions later on, and we're going to have to deal with a lot of confusion and frankly, just people being burned out and, embittered about the process that, on paper seemed like, okay, this is going to be cool. I'm going to go in and learn. But in reality, it's kind of a crap show, So those are the two elements that I think a structured shadow shift needs to have is that extra person on to actually dedicate themselves to walking that barista through all the stuff on the bar as they function, making the drinks, doing the normal shift stuff, but they are instructing the barista about all of that. Arrange your information according to what you need that barista to learn. So maybe day one, you're learning about the POS and the chores and brewing. Maybe day two, it's talking about drink building and how you can assist the barista a little bit more. But it's important that you plan this out so that people aren't just hanging out on bar and hoping that teaching moments happen, that you're using this opportunity to its maximum by planning out the content, making sure the person that's shadowing them knows and understands their role in the shadow shift, that they are to be constantly talking to this barista and instructing them. And even if it's annoying to the new barista, that's fine. I actually like it when people get annoyed because by the time I've repeated something to, the 6th or 7th time, if they start to get like, like this is so much repetition, perfect. We've reached the point where I feel like maybe this information has really settled in. So what's important about the shadow shift, again, is that you have the capacity to actually teach and instruct, and having 3 people on the shift, a regular barista, the new barista, and the person who is instructing and coaching that new barista through the process of the open, the close, the checklists, how we do dishes, what cleaning the bathroom means. That's key. And then that person who's instructing has a clear understanding of their role, what they're teaching, how they're teaching it. And you only need a few of those shadow shifts, especially when they're structured like that, to make a big impact where that person, you'll be surprised how quickly they can become bar ready when we put the investment in up front for substantive, planful shadow shifts. Structured shadow shifts are the way we should go. So I hope that really helps you and that it gives you some ideas for how you can restructure some of your onboarding, create a little bit more substance in these processes. And yeah, I think it's going to help your baristas immensely. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. And I will see you here next week on another edition of Shift Break, from keys to the shop.